Well, I wanted to explore marine biology for the bone bed, and so I spent a lot of time with the New England Aquarium in turtle research. There's sea turtles and a wide variety of these amazing creatures. Of course, I love all marine, mammals and the reptiles. And while I was doing this, I got introduced to a particular type of turtle that is really considered prehistoric, and it's almost extinct, and they can become extremely huge, and they really date back to the dinosaur period, about 70 million years ago, which dovetailed right into my doing a dinosaur dig. And I thought, what if Scarpetta worked a case that involves something extremely old and something where she has to extract evidence from a very large creature and also make sure that its life is saved. So that just spun off into what I think is a really fun adventure. Well, the really cool thing about the bone bed is I'd never heard of such a thing before. And when Donna Dixon Aykroyd called me and said, would you and Stacy like to go on a dinosaur dig, she was talking about this bone bed up in Grand Prairie, Alberta, Canada. And I said, bone bed? Now, that's a term I've never heard before. And of course, it literally is a bed of bones where you have, in this case, perhaps hundreds of dinosaurs. These creatures died probably all at once, and over millions of years, their bones were traveled, were moved by just the physics of what the earth is doing, and water and all sorts of things. They end up collecting in one area, which is where the paleontologists have been excavating for quite a long time. And so I just thought it was a cool phrase. I found lots of dinosaur bones, and you have to know what to look for because they look like rocks, but if you look at them closely, they begin to take on the shape of the bones that they are, but they're petrified. And so it's interesting how at first what becomes just stones lying on the earth or in the mud, as you begin to get acclimated, you begin to piece together this creature. I stayed in a place that definitely made me think about homicide. Stacy and I were in a trailer in a campsite that was wooded, and it was pouring rain. There was no lights. We had no electricity in the trailer, and I thought this would be a place where something very bad could happen, and I bet you can guess that something does. Well, to get to this particular bone bed, we had to ride a jet boat on a river for about 45 minutes because this was only accessible by helicopter or boat. And it was a very steep mountainside. And I took some pictures while I was on the jet boat. And later when I was looking at them, there was a picture actually of myself on the back. And because of the way the sun was positioned, it really burned out all the images. And all you saw was an outline of a person on the back of a boat with huge white churning wake. And then this amazing part of the world that looks like no one's ever been there before. And that created a thought of mystery in my mind. I wondered what would happen if Scarpetta got an image like that anonymously that was accompanied by something very sinister, and she would have to figure out who is this person, who sent this to me, and what's going to happen next. Well, one of the great things about social networking, particularly Facebook, Twitter, Google+, is I start hearing directly from my readers. And when they continue to raise questions such as, what's happened to so-and-so? Are we ever going to see this particular character again? It actually gets me thinking. And I had a question repeated to me through the social networking is, whatever happened to Dr. Anna Zenner? And I thought, I'm going to answer that in this book. And I'm not going to say what the answer is, but in a way, you will have that question answered about what happened to this character that nobody has really seen since the last precinct. It's been about 12 years. So my fans help inform me, and when they tell me enough times, I want to know what happened to this particular person, or I'd like to see, oh, there's also another character, and this happens, of course, towards the end, and I'm not going to say a word about who this is, but it's going to be a very big surprise. Well, again, what I love about social media is everything that's good about it can be really, really bad about it. I've met a couple famous people through Twitter, and we end up getting to know each other, and then we decide to meet somewhere. And one in particular, a very famous actress, when we met at this restaurant in London, when we both walked in, I looked at her and I said, now's the moment when we both find out we're somebody else. Because you can go on these sites and pretend to be somebody you're not, and so that opens the door to a great deal of intrigue, the anonymity, the possible uses of impersonation, in addition to the good things that can be done. So I decided to have a scenario where, of course, who could be more dangerous with something like Twitter than Marino? And Marino gets involved in it, and it causes something most unusual to happen. And again, I always try to take what's going on now and weave it into a story, because this is what my characters would be dealing with. And I think a lot of my fans would like to know, what does Scarpetta think of Twitter? Does she tweet? Answer is no. Would Marino do it? Oh yeah. Well, Scarpetta has become very skilled at what I call non-conversations. She lives with an FBI agent who can't always talk about what he knows. He lives with a chief medical examiner and director of forensic labs who can't always tell what she knows. And then you have Lucy, who sometimes you don't want to know what she's doing, and Scarpetta's gotten very good at not knowing what Lucy's doing, because some of what Lucy is doing, shall we say, enters the realm of situational ethics. She thinks it's okay, but legally maybe it's not. We all know what she's like on the computer with her hacking skills. So this is just the universe that this woman lives in, and the very nature of her work is that she can't talk about it to hardly anybody anyway. So she is quite adept at living with a tension of non-communication and secrecy that most of us would find extraordinarily uncomfortable, a little bit like somebody who works for the CIA or an undercover agent might have to adapt to. And they seem to balance this out rather beautifully. And the fun of it for me is the dialogue, because Scarpetta and Benton in particular get into these amazing conversations where if you're not really paying attention, you don't understand what they're saying, because what they're saying is not what they're saying, and they both get it. Well, Boston in the Bone Bed is actually one of the major characters. The scenes, particularly when she goes out into the harbor for a body recovery, the courthouse in Boston, which is an important scene because you have this beautiful federal courthouse right on the harbor. And so the city and the history and nearby Cambridge all are an important setting and character in this book, and I fully expect that I will keep her in this area. That's one thing that I've missed since I moved her from Richmond 12 years ago, is that the location, of course, is a character. And she's had a lot of different characters as she's moved around in the series in the last decade or so, and that I've gotten tired of, to be honest with everyone. I really want her to have a sense of location, and I think since I'm going to stay here, I don't see myself moving from the Boston area. We're going to see a lot of this area in my future books. I think the way I write my books now is dramatically different from the way it was in the very beginning more than 20 years ago. Back then I was very much influenced by the linear quality of the genre, which is you're supposed to have a beginning, a middle, and end, and you solve a mystery, so to speak, and we're not so interested in the lives of the characters or the psychology of these people. It's more about the whodunit quality, and I didn't like that from the start. And actually, with postmortem, 60 pages actually got edited out because I had so much about Scarpetta's personal life and other details that somebody decided shouldn't be there in that type of book. Now things have changed very dramatically. I think that people are much more interested in characters. They want to know who these people are, why they live this way, what it feels like, what they do with each other and to each other, why are killers the way they are, what happened to the victim, and what did that person do that might have helped lead up to it, and all these sorts of questions. And I think in part the other aspect of this for me is, in the beginning, the forensics and the procedural qualities of what I did were extremely important because nobody else was doing that. No one was telling you what forensic fire investigation was like. Now, with all these shows all over television, I don't feel as compelled to be quite as nitpicky about all the procedures. I'd rather explore the characters and have the procedures just be something that's part of the backdrop of the story. It's all there, but that's not the major point of it. I do use an e-reader. I have an iPad. I've tried all of the e-readers, the Nook, the Kindle. I'm a fan of all of them. Mainly because I travel, I can have 20, 30, however many books I want, and something that fits in my briefcase. And so I actually buy, I would bet you 10 times more books now than I used to, because it's so easy. I can hear about something I'm interested in, I immediately will download it on my iPad, and if I get into something and I don't like it, I don't have to finish it, and I'm not lugging a book all over the place. So I love the printed books too, but I think there's room for both.